Good evening, everybody. My name is Dawn Numdu. I'm the manager for audience engagement at Food for Mzansi. And we're back with another exciting episode of Gather to Grow here on Twitter Spaces. And I'm really looking forward to tonight's topic. We're talking about all things crop farming, specifically giving advice about what you can farm in which province or in your specific province or the region where you're at. And then, of course, I can't do this without my co-host, who's Gugulethu Mahlangu. Gugu, nice to have you back here on Gather to Grow.
Hi, Dawn, and hi to everyone listening on the show. I'm very, very excited to learn and gather here to grow with our amazing speakers. Yeah, let's get the show on the road.
Thanks so much, Gugu. So as we usually do it, we give all of our participants a chance to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about what they do, where they're from, and then we'll get right into it. Unati, could you maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself? Unati Lenwani is an agronomy lecturer at Elsenburg Agricultural Training Institute in the Western Cape. Welcome, Unati, and so great to have you with us.
I am Unati Liwani. Originally, I am from the Eastern Cape. I have a BSc in crop production and horticultural science with a master's degree in crop production. So currently working as an agronomy lecturer specializing in small grain production, which I will talk about that. I've also have experience in terms of vegetable production, that is working on a farm on hydroponic management of tomatoes and peppers. I'm working in the KZN Department of Agriculture, working with farmers in terms of implementing appropriate extension practices and scientific methods to improve our agriculture in South Africa.
Thank you so much, Unati. I realize again and again every week when I have experts join us contributing that there's a world of experience and knowledge out there. And it's always just great to have expert voices from such different backgrounds. It makes this space so special. Next up, we have Sandra van Eden. Sandra is a horticulture and post-harvest production lecturer, also at Elsenburg Agricultural Training Institute in the Western Cape. Definitely representing Elsenburg here tonight. Sandra, thank you so much for joining us, and so great to have you with us.
Thank you, Dawn. It's a privilege to be here with you. I studied at University of Pretoria and the University of Stellenbosch, so I live in the Cape for the last about 10 years. I've been a lecturer at Elsenburg now for about 6 years. My main focus is fruit production, orchard practices, and also citrus and subtropical fruit, as well as the post-harvest geology of fruit, which is extremely important because that's going to determine your market price.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sandra. And of course, Sandra has been featured on Food for Mzansi a number of times, and the most recent story where she contributes on is specifically about growing strawberries and everything that you need to know about growing strawberries. So if you're interested in that, you can, of course, go to Food for Mzansi to go and check that out as well. And then last but not least, Sipamandla Sengwayo is an agricultural extension officer from KwaZulu-Natal. Welcome, Sipamandla, and so great to have you with us. And we've also written about you on Food for Mzansi, but tell the floor and everyone that's listening a little bit about yourself.
I'm Sipamandla Sengwayo. I'm from KwaZulu-Natal. I've been around the agricultural sector for a couple of years, and I've been involved with agricultural research with some research institutes, and then I've gained some of knowledge and experience on how one can successfully grow their crop more profitably. Currently, I'm employed as an extension officer by one of the fast-moving consumer goods, where I'm specializing in potato production.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you with us. I think we can never overlook the role of agricultural extension officers within the agricultural sector, and so great to have you with us and looking forward to engaging with you as well. Maybe we can go back to you and Unati. I think there's a number of aspects that we can cover, but perhaps we could start with farming with small grain specifically. And when we talk about crops, what are some of the crops that we can focus on, and what are the production areas that we should be looking at when it comes to crop farming?
Firstly, when it comes to small grain production, we refer to small grain, we're talking about wheat, oats, barley that are planted, especially wheat, the major crop that is produced in South Africa. There are different regions that actually produces in large quantity, and that is because of the various climatic conditions of those particular areas. So we have grains which are produced under dry land production areas. So this means they solely depend on the rainfall. And then we have those that are produced under irrigated conditions, where you will see in one of the farms where you will see center pivots. Those are actually used for irrigation purposes. The first thing I think I should mention when it comes to the production of small grains, your oats, your barley, your wheat, is that you actually need a very huge area to plant. It's unlike vegetables where you can easily start planting on your small garden. And the reason being is that is all the quantities that is required. For example, when we talk about barley, we talk about the malting process, which is a process that it undergoes for it to make beer. So they actually do the grading processes and they need very large quantities of grain. So that is why you'll find that in South Africa, most farmers that are working with small grain, the advanced commercial farmers, be it in the Western Cape and in the Free State, and also there are some parts of the Northwest Province. In terms of the major province, Western Cape is leading due to the climatic change. I remember when I was working for the ARC in Bethlehem, the farmers that we were working with, they started experiencing problems with the climate. So they weren't receiving enough rainfall that they are supposed to receive, and they had to make adjustment and also shift to other crops. So if you're looking into small grain, to summarize everything, is that you have to look around this province, which is the Western Cape, being one of the major producers, and also practicing conservation agriculture, which I'll talk about that, and then also the Free State and some parts of the Northwest. Those are the major provinces that are currently producing. We do have small parts of Limpopo in the Eastern Cape. However, the grain that they're producing, it depends on their consumer or their end product, because Western Cape and the Free State, they produce the ones that you use to make your bread, your pastas and so forth. And then others, it can, for example, for livestock purposes, if you want to sell to farmers that have their livestock. So
not at all. Thank you so much, Unati, for enlightening us about that. And I just wanted to maybe shed some light on maybe a specific province. I think you mentioned Western Cape. So a lot of people associate Western Cape, especially as farmers, we associate Western Cape with a lot of fruit, the citrus industry, and obviously wine. Is this, rule of thumb of which crop grows more in which region something that we should be following as farmers if we want to, let's say, do grapes located in Mpumalanga, for instance?
Definitely, you can look at that. But remember, there are other farmers that are producing in certain provinces, even if the crop is not a major province, and they're actually doing well in terms of production. If you want to start farming, you basically, find out in this particular province, it is produced. But then now we talk now about site evaluation, site selection and evaluation, because you'll find that it doesn't mean necessarily that every town in the province has the potential to produce the grain. So when you talk about site selection, you have to consider that, like the soil type of the area, does it have water source, the climatic conditions, so which are some of the things that you actually need to consider for and think about if your farming will be successful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Unati. And I guess now that's why more and more people are going into smart agriculture, so that we can kind of control the climatic conditions wherever we are. So I think that's something that's booming and that farmers should also consider. But thank you so much, Unati.
Sandra, maybe you can also come in here, and Swamandla, please also free to join in on the conversation in terms of production methods, specifically when it comes to vegetables. Google was just talking about smart agriculture. We see farmers producing food on rooftops, for example. What are some of the aspects that we must look at when it comes to production methods? And it's obviously changed over time. Some of the things that are almost consistent when it comes to crop farming.
I think for me, in any crop production system, the consideration of the prevailing climatic condition on that particular area should be the first priority in guiding you which crop to grow in that particular area, despite the interest or the economic interest or the profits that are being attained by growing that crop. But the first thing you need to consider is it adapted to your area or region. So, which is pretty much what the speaker has just said, to take the climatic consideration as the top priority in deciding which crop you're going to grow.
Thank you so much. Besides the climate, what are the other aspects that you need to consider, especially when you're talking about the scale on which you want to start out with? So is it a 1 hectare farm or 5 hectares or even more than that? What are some of the aspects that you need to consider? I see we have a request for Ayabonga who would like to contribute, but maybe Sandra, could you take this one just to talk about in terms of scale? What do you need to consider in terms of your production?
I agree with the previous speaker that the climate is the most important to start, because the more you deviate from your ideal growing conditions, the more inputs you will have to have. For instance, if you are in a very, very hot area, you might have to put up shade netting to prevent your fruit trees from burning. Or if you are in an area that's prone to frost, you'll have to protect your crops that are sensitive to frost. So it's very important to match your crop that you're growing to the climate. Regarding scale, I only work with fruit. Some fruit you can grow on a small scale because it's a high value product. You can have a smaller, more intensive area that you plant. Everybody is aware of the amount of blueberries that are planted in the last years. So that is a high value product if you've got the right cultivar. New cultivars are coming in all the time, and you must stay on top of that, the newest cultivars, because the market will also dictate to you what they want. And then other crops, of course, like rooibos, for instance, which can only grow in a small area in the Western Cape. they're very extensive, and you will have to have much more acreage with rooibos tea.
Yeah, no, definitely. It definitely gives us an idea of the scale for the type of crop that you would want to be growing. So I think the point that I was trying to make was basically just understanding which crops works at what scale. But I think that might need to be unpacked in a much broader discussion. But it definitely gave some context to what I was asking. Ayabonga, I see you've requested to become a speaker. Would you like to ask a question or engage with our panelist who's here tonight?
Hi, everyone. It's basically just a question regarding the recording. I actually just saw the pop-up and I'm quite interested in today's topic, but I don't know how far you guys have gone. I just wanted to find out, how do I get a hold of the recording?
All of our Gather to Grow sessions are available on our YouTube channel after we've hosted it. So you can definitely stay tuned to Food from Zanzi. We'll have an article and a link to be able to listen to it live. But we've just started, so we started a few minutes late today.
No, thank you for the space, guys.
Gugu, I saw that you're unmuted.
To Sandra, so I don't know if I can just follow up on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Sandra, you mentioned that climate is the most important requirement to look for when you're in a province and to see whether your province can accommodate you with the types of crops that you want to grow. So I just wanted to ask for new entry farmers specifically that are in different provinces in the country, is climate the only requirement to look for, especially if that can be controlled, via tunnels and shade netting? What other requirements can hinder one person to do maybe lucerne or dry beans in KZN instead of in Mpumalanga, where it's predominantly lucerne farmers?
Let me start with, climate will determine what you can grow. In terms of frost sensitivity, in terms of cold requirement, that means that some fruit crops need a lot of cold units in the winter so to be able to flower efficiently in the next spring. But besides climate, I would say the next most important thing is water, to have reliable quantity of good quality water. And then, of course, also infrastructure. If you farm with a very with a crop that's got a very short shelf life, for instance, strawberries, you must have good roads, you must be close to a place where you can have a packing shed and cold rooms, and also not too far from your big center that you can take your product to the wholesale market and then from there as quickly as possible to your retailer. So that is important, and then as well as your soil. Soil can differ great in terms of the drainage, the amount of nutrients in the soil, the texture of the soil. So crops are in a way very specific type of soil they want to grow. And I always think that a lighter sandy soil is easier to grow in than a heavy or a clay soil, but that's mostly dependent on the requirements of the crop.
You've said quite a lot. Thank you so much, Andra. And yeah, I think I was going to ask about the water importance, because I'm in Brit, Northwest, and Britain itself is the region where, there's certain parts are geared for mixed farming, geared for crop production, geared for livestock. I just wanted to say, well, it's the same climate roundabout, but what else should we be looking out for? And I think you touched on the water aspect. Maybe we can speak more about the soil type. I'll ask my next question regarding to that. Thanks, Andra.
Gugu, we have another request from Farm with Fred. Fred, would you like to ask a specific question to our speakers or just engage on tonight's topic? The floor is yours.
I have questions, though. I wanted first to have an engagement in terms of crop farming and recipe. For those who don't know me, I'm Fred from Kenya. I'm an agronomist and a farmer, also a trainer. You can check what I'm doing on my YouTube channel at Farm with Fred and learn more about farming. So I wanted to be very specific and very general in terms of crop farming. For those who are in farming and it's not taking them well, and those who want to get into farming, to give them a few steps that may help them in order to succeed, because it's all about business and it's all about making money. So before you get into farming, one thing you have to do, you cannot get into farming and do all the crops like Fred is doing. You have to be very specific. You choose a crop. It can be either a greenhouse crop or an open field crop. And after choosing the crop, look at the market. There is a market trade. If you are okay, you are satisfied that this crop will be sellable, what you do next is now you learn the skills. As a farmer, even if there are some people working for you, you must know what is supposed to be done. One of the things that has made me successful in my farming journey is knowing what to do. Yes, I have guys that works for me, but I train them, I supervise them, and you cannot supervise something you don't know about. So make sure you get the skills. From getting the skills that you have chosen, be it cabbages, be it tomatoes, make sure you have good numbers. One thing I've known about farmers will tell you, I have 2 hectares of watermelon, I have 2 cabbages, but ask them how many plants do you have there? They don't know. At the end of it, people tell you, Fred lied to us that 1 hectare can give you this money. They didn't get it in that 1 hectare. But the question is, did you maintain the numbers? The numbers is a game. If you fail to maintain the numbers, you are out of the game. So in numbers, that where the quantity comes in, and after achieving the numbers, check on the quality. Quality is very key. In the market, the quality sells. A good product sells. Even if there is a market reflux, even if the cabbages or any other product has flooded the market and you have quality product, I'm telling you, you'll sell and make good money out of it. If you follow those steps, I'm assuring you'll succeed.
Thank you so much, Farming with Fred. Great advice there, sound advice, and definitely something that should never be overlooked and an important aspect when it comes to advice for new farmers. I see we have another request from Matthias. Matthias, the floor is yours. If you'd like to share a comment, ask a question to our speakers here tonight.
John, while we wait for Matthias, maybe I can ask Fred a follow-up question with regards to what he said about the numbers.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all about the numbers games, and I'm sure that in Kenya, where you guys are, also regions are better suited for certain crops. But now I want to know, because it is a numbers game, and you find yourself a farmer in the rural areas, you find yourself a farmer in the urban areas, you find yourself a farmer in the different provinces that we have here in South Africa. Is it possible for us to even maybe do our market research and be like, you know what, let me invest in, let's say, groundnuts. And if I invest in groundnuts and sell them to the market around me in this different province, then where groundnuts are more popular, like here in South Africa, it would be Limpopo. Can I make a decision, basically, after doing my market research, as Fred was speaking about numbers, and say that I'm going to grow groundnuts? It is possible. And whatever yield I make, it's going to be enough for me to win and, be successful and actually make profits, even though the region isn't favorable. Maybe I can ask Sandra, you can take this one, because Fred was speaking about numbers. So make profit anyway because, the market isn't too high. Not a lot of people are doing maybe groundnuts in certain regions. And should that also propel us to farm whatever we can where we are?
I think talking of numbers and for farmers to understand how the game of numbers work is, in order to be cost effective in whatever you're doing. Like, for example, we know that in 1 acre, you're supposed to use this amount of fertilizer or this amount of chemicals. But some farmers will use the amount or will use the cost that is supposed to be used in that hectare or 1 acre or an acre. But whatever they are managing using the capital is not enough to take the cost. Like, for example, when preparing a business plan or a business case, there is a certain amount of cost impact that is supposed to go to a certain size of land. You find that because farmers are advised and they have a plan for the same. Now, are they maintaining the numbers of what is supposed to consume this cost of production? Because at the end of it, you fail the game of numbers. You want to go to the market and tell the buyers that I use this amount in order to produce these cabbages. What is there is you be competitive in the market, and to be competitive comes with the amount that you have and the quality that you have. So if you fail to maintain the numbers, you may have a very big challenge when it comes to marketing. And you remember, we started with marketing. Now we are coming to the field to produce, and we are producing as much as possible and quality in order now to win in this game.
I think also a deciding factor on what to farm in your province is all about the numbers, which I 120% agree with you. If I am going to have X amount and invest in groundnuts in Johannesburg, because the demand is there and the supply is not enough because they're getting it all the way from another province, I think that's something that we also should be aware of as farmers, that the numbers game also play a part,
Okay, thank you, Google. On the numbers, even the seed breeders themselves usually tells that, like in groundnuts, you're supposed to plant or you're supposed to sow this amount, maybe let's say 50 kgs per acre. So you see, we are already guided from the beginning. So it's us now to maintain what we sowed or what we planted in order to run an economical business and to be competitive in the market.
Thanks so much, Fred. You've given us lots to think about, and I think it doesn't only apply to crop farming. So I think it's definitely broader tips on agriculture and any commodity for that matter. But just to bring it back to specifically around crop production, I think one of the aspects that we focused on earlier was around smart agriculture, and the word conservation agriculture was also used. Unati, maybe you can come in here, and Mandla, I'd like to also bring you in to talk about some of the more popular crops that's produced in South Africa, and potatoes being one of them as well. So we'd like to also hear your voice a bit. But Unati, firstly, the floor is yours in terms of giving us a bit of an overview of conservation agriculture and production practices, and specifically how we can improve the way we produce our food when it comes to that.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I've been trying to get connection, so I'm really struggling with that. But I did wanted to have an input on what is currently said in terms of production and looking at what you want to produce in a particular province, farmers who are starting, and also how do you ensure that what you will be producing, you might have market access. So it is mentioned that it's very important, first of all, to know your market. What is introduced in, I think, in KZN and the Western Cape, it's called the Shep Approach. Shep stands for Smallholder Horticultural Empowerment Program. So I'm not sure if it's in collaboration with Japan, but the whole aim is to try and teach small-scale farmers who are just starting in the business of agriculture in terms of how do they go and approach market, right? Different markets have different requirements of the produce. If maybe we're talking about cabbage, right? They will show you the different size that they would want, the maturity stage in which they would prefer that should deliver, for example, in the case of tomato and so forth. And those things, they do play a role. You need to start there because those things actually do play a role in how you plant. For example, when we talk of the size in cabbages, it plays a role now in the spacing of your crop itself. If we're talking about the colors, or for example, in tomato that they require, including the sweetness or whatever, it talks about managing your water, which is your EC within the water, and also your pH, and of course, managing your nutrient management. So the first step is what we're having about water, climate, the land itself, but now it also goes to aspects of production management practices so that you ensure that what you planted, you actually get the product that is required for market. And I think in South Africa, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done around that in ensuring that our farmers, they do know how to plant. They will be given the plant spacing, the germination stage, you actually start to see the vegetable germinating. But now how do you go about ensuring that, we call them the pre-harvest management techniques, or you actually manage that so that at the end of the day, you can achieve the required end product, which is very much important. That was the point I wanted to make. I had a connection problem. Secondly, I believe you want me to briefly elaborate on conservation agriculture.
Absolutely, Unati. I think we've mentioned the climatic conditions being very important and water. I think it's time for us to focus on the soil type as well, in terms of what methods we can use to work conjunction with the soil, and that can make us grow quality foods where we are and get higher yields at the end of the day. So what kind of maybe different farming practices and soil types should we consider in different provinces that we are all farming in?
When it comes to soil types, you can see, for example, in the case of spinach, most provinces, they do production in spinach. If crops can add vegetables, for example, now we're speaking in vegetables because that is where most of our small-scale farmers start, in the vegetable production. So looking at soil type, they will see the soil is a sandy loam soil, for example, not too clay, which means when it's too clay, it avoids the nutrient management of the plant. The important thing I can say is you need to test your soil. When you test your soil, it will give you a percentage of the clay, the sand, the silt that is there. Those things are important because, for example, if you have a soil that has a high percentage of clay, so you look at your soil type. You've analyzed your soil. The soil is suitable. You've planted. So because of the current climate change that is happening, farmers have looked for alternative in terms of trying to preserve the soil that they have and also making sure that it continuously gives them yield. So conservation agriculture is a combination of three principles, very important principles: crop rotation, permanent soil cover, and minimum soil disturbance. Remember, when you start farming, you are disturbing your soil. You continuously farm crop after crop, you continuously disturbing your soil. So what are you doing better in terms of trying to see that this soil will sustain you for the longest period of time? So that is what we're looking at when you're looking at conservation agriculture, where we're trying to avoid things like soil degradation. And then we come to crop rotation. Crop rotation that you can even practice when you are a vegetable farmer. Over time, you start to have a large amount of those pests and diseases that you cannot control. And the only control method may can use is chemical application. Chemical application has an impact in our environment. So we're trying to reduce that. So in order for you to meet it halfway so that you reduce maybe your spray, if you have a spray plan, if you are irrigating spraying on a weekly basis, now you can say, okay, after 2 weeks, because now you're practicing crop rotation, you look at the crops that are not from the same family as the crop that you planted, which have the potential to break the cycle of this accumulation of pests and diseases that occur year after year. And then minimum soil disturbance basically refers to the type of implements that we that are using. In terms of small grain, farmers have mastered, especially in the Western Cape, they've mastered actually the whole concept of conservation agriculture, because in terms of crop rotation, it means whatever part that you maybe don't harvest from your crop, you will leave it to decompose within your soil to form the organic matter, regenerate fresh nutrients, and so forth. And at the same time, you are covering your soil, so you're preventing the amount of moisture that can be lost in your soil when, for example, now in this very hot climate that we are facing. So that is basically what we're looking at conservation agriculture. There are various practices when you are a small farmer that you can do. It can, for example, talk about how unhealthy chemicals are. So you can try to also put in the cultural practices in terms of you remove your weeds and all that, so that you don't solely rely on chemical application. I can speak a lot about conservation agriculture, but I think I should end here.
Thank you so much, Unathi, and I would personally enjoy it if you went on and on about CA, because I think just the principle of soil health, whichever province you are in, is very important, and you can get so much more if you take care of your soil, if you do soil tests, and you practice good farming practices like conservation agriculture, regenerative agriculture. I do believe that you can get so much more out of your land if you do that. So thanks for sharing, Unathi. I see Mitchell is here, and Mitchell is from Namibia, right, Mitchell?
Yeah, I'm from Namibia.
So the Northern Cape is a province that you guys are nearby. I think you guys share the Orange River. Predominantly, NAM, when you're talking about the Northern Cape, it's big on sheep farming, if I'm not mistaken. And, it's holding a lot of promise with the sheep, with the goats, for emerging farmers as well. Maybe you can tell us more about what is ideal for Northern Cape farmers and what you guys are predominantly known for, other than sheep and goats, and other opportunities that are in your province that you think are unique to Northern Cape.
I am from Namibia. It's a vast country. We got, last I did my geography, I think we got like 8 regions. You guys would call them province. And each one is uniquely different from the Northern Cape one. We do, near the Orange River, they do plant grapes and some dates. They do that. Those are the 2 cultivars that work well there. And then when you travel a bit, coming up a bit to the eastern part of the country, that's now our livestock triangle. Literally one of the towns that side is called. The region, when you enter the region, there's a big placard that says cattle country. There is the part near Botswana, so they do a lot of cattle ranching there. When you head up, going upwards, as if you guys, I don't know how familiar of my country, if you're going up as if you're going to our national park, which is Etosha, you would see that is now the area where most of the farmers would do millet. We call it mahangu. And then when you go to the eastern part of my country, which is now closer to Zambia, where I am from, which is called the Zambezi region. That would be the Caprivi arm strip on most of the maps if you look at it. But we changed the name. It's called the Zambezi region now. That area gets very good rain. It gets about 700 give or take plus rain showers there in a good year if we're not experiencing a drought. The lady that was speaking prior to me, saying conservation agriculture, I think is something that we would need to focus on that side, because I'm hearing many of you learned colleagues here speaking of crop rotation and so forth. But it's an unknown concept to many farmers, particularly in the northeastern part of the country, because they only do white maize and it's done from November till December and then harvest in January or February there. So this was very quite interested to hear what you had to say on that, because I did some readings before I joined you guys. I did some readings also for my YouTube channel where I read there that actually sorghum uses less nutrients in the soil than the people are very white maize obsessed. And what the lady prior to us was speaking about conservation in soil, protecting the soil, preventing soil deprivation, which is currently something that we're experiencing. I know our Minister of Agriculture is trying to push in protecting the soil and making sure the nutrients are returned into the soil. But now to Food from Zanzi. Yourself, Gookston, you're also a horticulture farmer. I follow you and I know. How would you encourage a community that is white maize obsessed to actually start considering diversifying their crop portfolio? As I mentioned, because you guys would be the experts. I'm more into livestock. So I can speak on a livestock point of view, but I know for a fact that if you keep on doing the same thing, you must be damaging the soil in a particular way. How do we make sure that we keep those 50, 60 hectares that we have still viable for the next 25 years? How do I go about encouraging my granddad and my dad to say, this December, let's not plant any maize, let's try some tomatoes or some potatoes or garlic? How do I go about convincing them? Because like here in my country, white maize is big business. It makes money. Guys are making, on a good harvest, they can make 100K plus. So how do I convince these stubborn old people?
Michelle, that was such a great perspective. And I think that's what I was also alluding to when I asked that we are farmers wherever we are first, right? So now just because I'm not in Cape Town, does that mean I can't do wines and grapes? I think we do have the experts on here, which is why, the decision tonight on Gather to Grow. Experts, please zoom in on this because it's so important, right? I'm not now going to leave bread that is, big on cabbages, that's big on spinach, that's big on butternuts, and farm grapes. Everyone is doing all these cash crops. There's water in abundance. Why now should I steer away from what my province is known for? And most importantly, and if I can steer, I think Unati mentioned that we need to maybe do some conservation agriculture. Maybe you need to build in tunnels if the climate is not favorable. But I feel that is that the rule of thumb that, guys, Bruce area is predominantly horticulture. Let's keep it that way. Don't come in here with your sheep and goats. Is that the rule of thumb, or, is there something more to this? And I think maybe we can ask Pa or Sandra.
One of the things, as we said it earlier on, the major influence is the climate. Luckily now we see the advances in genetics. So we're starting to see crops being introduced in areas that were not known to grow there before. So that's the plus. Another thing that we need to take into consideration, it's a market drive. If there's a nearby market for that particular crop, definitely it will be a crop of high target in that particular area. And also I want to highlight some viewpoints regarding the conservation agriculture. As much as it's a very important thing that we all preach that we must do, but also we need to consider how can we manipulate or influence the market, because it's very difficult to convince someone to do crop rotation, yet maybe he's not getting enough value or enough.
Supermanda, do we still have you with us?
Okay, I think maybe he's having network problems, Dawn, but maybe we can ask Sandra is here, or Unati, the question, because he was alluding to also just look your markets. I mean, it is a numbers game, so if it's more profitable for you to do, i.e., I'm always going to say nuts, guys, because I think it's not something that people predominantly think about. It's always fruits and vegetables. But let's say I want to go into niche products and I want to, really get onto the macadamia industry, and I'm based in Gauteng. And I realized that if I can, supply maybe hops, because I know of a rooftop farmer that's doing hops and supplying it straight to SAB, which is close by. So I feel that those are the factors that we need to be looking at as farmers. First, should we be looking at what's going to give us money or what's going to be beneficial for the environment first? So maybe you can take this one, Sandra.
I just want to add to what Farmer Fred said. I think it can't be stressed enough that your market is going to determine the profit you're going to make. And it's one thing to know the technical side of your crop production, but you must also know exactly what your profit's going to be. Do you have a market? Where are you going to market? How far are you from your markets? Because that's definitely going to determine what you're going to grow. If you live, say, for instance, in Prince Albert district, which is far from any fresh market, it won't be worth your while to farm with peaches, for instance. But the climate is there exceptionally good for peaches, but then you must maybe look at drying your product and then transporting your dried product to the market. That would be more profitable for you. And I know these are farmers, they also sometimes farm with vegetable seed because you need to be isolated to farm with vegetable seed. Then I also want to add to something that Unati said. I think that agricultural conservation as well as integrated pest management is an extremely important topic and something that we cannot leave behind. And it might be a topic on its own to have even a few conversations about. Conserving your agricultural land is of utmost importance. I just want to add something about innovation as well. One of the previous speakers mentioned the genetic advances in some cultivars, and that is opening up whole new areas for us. For instance, we used to be able to plant apples and pears only in the very cold areas. Now there are cultivars that can be planted in warmer areas. And you must also be aware of the microclimate of your area. There is, for instance, a farm in Klein Willem that farms with mangoes, which is called Cape Mango. I think it was also featured on your Food from Mzansi earlier. We all know that mangoes are traditionally in Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal, but this farmer can come into the market at a specific time that there's no other mangoes on the market. He comes in a bit later when all the summer fruits already past their time. And that makes his product, it's almost like a niche product, because when his mangoes come on the market in there's no other mangoes. So it's very important to stay abreast of all the newest developments, and also to try and experiment a bit. Try out different things on a small scale. When you find out that it works, you can go on to a bigger scale. There are many study groups as well on conservation farming and soil health and so on. If you want, I can give you some contacts there, because that's definitely, we cannot leave it out of our future planning.
Sandra, you've mentioned that there's new technology coming up with the different seed varieties that can grow in different climatic conditions. Maybe you can give us just maybe one of the challenges one can face with farming a certain crop in the various provinces, what to look out for when it comes to how the market works, what to look out for when it comes to, the supply and demand. Because at the end of the day, I feel like new entry farmers will always focus on cash crops like your cabbages, like your spinach, because typically they grow, just about everywhere in the country. So now we are getting spinach that's exported all the way from Cape Town, baby leaf spinach, for instance. What challenges can one anticipate? Here I am, I'm farming in KwaZulu-Natal, and I really want to be a farmer. What are the challenges that I need to be aware of when it comes to choosing the crop for my region?
You can almost find anything in the shops now that's not even in season, even though it must be imported. Sometimes you often find baby vegetables that come from Zambia or Kenya or so on. So the channels are there, but it adds costs to your product. So unfortunately, I'm not an expert on vegetables. You might want to ask Unati about that. I'm more into fruit crops.
I see Unati, your hand is raised. Would you like to contribute to that one?
This topic actually, it gives back, I'm reminded of one farmer who once said to me, I am producing, the crop looks green, I don't see any pest and disease, but what am I doing wrong? In terms of marketing, getting market access and actually getting the appropriate produce. So I will speak in terms of vegetables that are planted on the field and vegetables that are planted in hydroponic farming. In your case, you speak, for example, about the macadamia. I know a lady we were working closely with in KZN. She started experimenting with 1 or 2 or 4 macadamia trees, I remember, and then now she has grown in that business. So I think the mindset needs to change. We need to be more diverse thinkers. Farming is a risk. And when we're talking about all these things, about climate change, about pest and disease that may occur, even pest and disease, they change because of the climate that we are having. So a farmer needs to be diverse in order to try and improve. Of course, you cannot take a risk.
I think our network is definitely not playing along. Unati, are you still with us? I don't think so. Hey, Unati, I think we can hear you now, but the network is not working with us tonight. But you just want to finish your thought on the point that you're trying to make in terms of diversification.
Okay, so I'll quickly talk about adaptation. I think my last point I wanted to talk about accurate data and crop registration, just to finish off what I wanted to make. So you actually need to adapt to change. Change being that you cannot take a risk, for example, when we talk about permanent soil cover and practices in your own field. If you look at companies like the ARC Small Grain, they have a report of what we refer to as the cultivar evaluation trials. The same trials is the cultivars that best perform within those trials. They look at various traits, how many tillers can it produce, the heads and so forth. That also applies to vegetables. If you have, for example, when I was working as a junior grower in one of the commercial farm producing tomatoes in East London, we would allocate, it can be a tunnel, okay, or a few rows within the tunnel where we test new cultivars in terms of their performance. So that is where everything should start in terms of moving forward with this climate change, adapting to management practices. Because as much as I can say, yes, you can produce crop in these various provinces, I would indicate the well-known things that you might look out for. But if you open your mind to change, for example, and you come across something maybe that I didn't mention, for example, we talk of the pest and diseases, crop protection practices, then you need to open your mind to not say, I was only introduced to this type of spray plan and now I cannot change. For example, if we're talking about spray plan, it's always advisable that you in a field, you haven't seen any problematic pest, for example, in tomatoes, like your red spider and all that. You start with the lighter chemicals. It can be your metarhizium 69 and 78. And then once you start to see major problems within your farm, then you start to change the chemical application. So our farmers have the potential, but everything is just being able to adapt to the management practices, the new intervention, testing new cultivars, testing new methods of production. And the last point that I would want to talk about is what I've mentioned about accurate data collection and recording. We did a training, and it was also someone that is actually an advisor for most farmers I know in East London and in the KZN from the Netherlands, who's a specialist. The company is called Delphi, which specializes in hydroponic production. So what I was taught is the importance of accurate data recording and also crop registration. Crop registration, I can say in case of tomatoes and pepper, using equipments like your vernier caliper to measure, for example, your stem diameter, to measure the truss, the size of your trusses and whatever. That helps you to keep in touch in knowing that you've recorded your water, obviously, you're checking your water on a daily basis, your irrigation schedule, you have it up to date. Now, you are trying to check with everything in terms of crop performance. Will this crop perform to an extent that is required for the market? Because everything that you do from the time you plant your seeds or you transfer your seedling, you go towards achieving the target yield for your market. The pruning, when do you prune? When do you truss prune? Some people don't know how to truss prune, and that becomes a problem in terms of the quality that they produce. I think it's always about you might not know, but if you ask, always be open up to change, because some people, they can't really adapt to change, and that becomes a problem. We still have also a long way to go in terms of teaching. If we want, for example, to talk about the chemicals application or whatever, you cannot just apply because I've recommended Hunter or Biomectin or whatever and just give it because you're seeing a severe problem in your field, thinking that putting a high dosage of that chemical would actually result to a higher yield. So things like accurate spray plans, recording the accurate spray plan helps in the next planting season, because now you get to see, I did this in the last planting season. Did it work? Did it not work? Should I continue doing this? If I'm drenching my seedlings in a trichodema or whatever, for example, trichodema, we use it to strengthen the roots of your crops. And so is it working? Is it not working? So crop registration goes hand in hand with the yield that you are collecting. And it actually did work for us while we were farming, because that's when you get to see what is it that is contributing to your yield improvement.
Natalie is still with us. Seems like we've lost her again, but I can definitely see the lecturer standing there on the podium tonight. So thank you so much. I think there's so much insights, and she's back. Okay, let me just see if I can get her back. I think we just had one or two last points to make. Natia, are you back with us?
Data collection helps you go back into knowing what you did wrong, instead of what you did right or what you did wrong in a particular season. Crop registration refers to, for example, if we're talking about tomatoes, if we're talking about peppers, if we're talking about cucumbers on the field, it helps you to know what is it that within your crop, when you apply certain water, how does your crop grow? For example, in some instances, you might find tomatoes with very thick stems, but is the truss that is producing and the quality of the tomato, is it suitable for what is actually required within the market? So be open up to cultivar evaluation, be open up to changing your spray plans. Just because you might experience a problem in terms of a severe pest, or to use the harsh chemical, immediately when that pest or that disease is no longer there, you don't have to continue using that harsh chemical. You can try to and use other chemical. In terms of production, I do know that a lot of farmers that start in farming, if you want to start in farming hydroponic, for example, vegetables, they will always advise you to use what we call the four-way spiders, those for irrigation, black pipes and whatever, and the twines that are black. But now we're moving on, like with the Delphi I've mentioned earlier, to single drippers, right? Single drippers, they are more efficient in terms of making sure that each crop gets to receive the nutrient. And if at least one dripper doesn't work, you're still able to maximize production. Those are sort of the things that you need to consider, and changing your mulch and all that.
Thank you so much, Nati. I think we should invite you back on a space just to talk us through all of the points again. I'm sure you agree with me, Gugu. I just want to give a spot to Kurundai. Your hand has been raised. What would you like to add or contribute to tonight's discussion?
I would love to know if the last two speakers are into farming or they are specialists like agronomists.
Nati, the last speaker that spoke, she's an agronomy lecturer. She's an agronomist herself, yes. So
okay,
we always try to keep...
Thank you. That's lovely. So I would love to give a very small confession. I was this ignorant guy who thought that there isn't any young indigenous South African who is into farming. The young South Africans, they are just consumers. They think of these white-collar jobs, and farming, they consider it a profession for the uneducated people. So thank you so much. I'm corrected now. It's good to know that there are so many indigenous South Africans who are into farming. Then secondly, I would love to give my submissions in this line. Now that we have realized that they are also, because South Africa has a very great climate and is a vast country. Now that we know there are so many indigenous South Africans who love farming, who take farming as a career, I think it is good too, because I heard another speaker is talking about the market. Let's also check markets outside South Africa. countries like Mozambique, Zimbabwe, they're in the region and even overseas. But that can only happen if we young people, young Africans in farming, come together, find a platform through our regional bloc SADC.
Thank you so much, Gurundai, for your contributions. Mitch, I did promise to give you one last word, so please take the floor, and then I'll ask our speakers just to add one last comment in closing.
Guys, I just want to find out, because thank you for the spaces, because they open up my eyes to a lot of things. Me, myself, sitting in Namibia, I just look at you guys that the South African farmers, you guys have it easy, you connected and you are in the markets. But every time I come here and I'm hearing you guys telling me contrary to what I believe, it's a bit shocking sometimes. Because Namibia, our biggest competition, and let me say our biggest fight, is the trade agreements between our two countries. Half of your produces you guys produce, what is ZZ2 tomatoes and vegetables, end up in our stores here. And we, the local farmers here, are struggling to get into the value chain. So I just wanted to hear, what is the game plan, some of you guys who are not the ZZ2s and so forth, what is the game plan you guys take? Because many of our stores in Namibia are South African brands. It's your Pick n Pays, it's your Checkers, it's your ShopRite, so forth. These are all South African stores. So I know they're loyal buying from you guys. So how is it that, how are you guys finding it? How are you guys finding a way to get into the value chain? Like, I don't know, should I call you Sissy Googs? Like Googs and so forth. How are you guys getting it? How are you breaking in? Because we are struggling. We have so much South African producers here from all the shops, from Woolies and so forth. I just had some tomatoes from ZZ2 right now in my salad. So that's the fight we are facing here in Namibia, being that we are so close to you guys. And I know some South Africans might not really know where Namibia is, or might not know anything, might just know maybe the desert and the sea. So it's a vast country, but we are struggling with our agricultural sector to really compete with the big juggernaut that we call our big sister country, South Africa. So how are you guys getting into this value chain? That's my question on it.
Thanks, Mitch. And maybe before you speak, Gugu, maybe just to contribute to Pamandla as an agricultural extension officer.
Yes, I would like to give some few points. The first one is that crop production, it's all about mastering the basics. So you need to master your plant population, your nutrition, and also that will influence your quality and your yield. And also as a farmer, always keep in mind that it's not only about the yield, but also it's about the quality. So moving forward, point of accessing the value chain, I think it's a very important point of discussion. I've seen the trend even in South Africa. Sometimes it's really very difficult for growers to access the value chain to have their goods being sold to most of the high supermarkets. Also, the issue of our products being planted in other countries. I think we've seen it even in South Africa with some of the crops, especially if you look at the sugar industry. It is also suffocating because of products from other countries. But I think it's something that needs to be addressed on higher level above us, which is more, I feel it's more politically driven. So I think if we really want to drive the future of agriculture in Africa as a whole, it's something that really needs to be addressed. How we open the access to the market chain for all the growers. Because I really see the potential in our rural growers, but the issue is the market. We don't know how they get into the market. And sometimes it's very painful. You will find people with land with a huge potential to produce. You will find their products being rotten in the field because there's no way to take those products to. So something that we really need to produce. I always say that South Africa as a country, we're doing very well in terms of produce commercial. But now there are lots of small-scale farmers who are stranded out there. Some have potential, but they don't have a market. How do we address that moving forward?
I definitely think there's a broader discussion that could be had here, Gugu. What do you think?
Absolutely, Dawn. I was actually just about to say the same thing, that, so much to unpack. And what Mitch posed is such an important topic, because I think we're struggling here as well, Mitch. And I think it has to do with compliance. Farming is becoming more and more corporate. And I think us as farmers can only do so much. Policies and government needs to intervene to make sure that it's a fair trade amongst all of us, so that we don't end up with what happened in the Kenya KFC saga. So, if we are producing while we have the land, maybe we should be compliant, maybe gather to grow. Next topic on compliance, please.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I know we probably want to stay on this session and tonight, but we'll have to wrap up. So just as a close, I'm going to ask Sandra just to say one last comment, one last tip when it comes to crop production, something that you would leave our beginner farmers or established farmers with in terms of tonight's topic, but also just in broader.
Know your crop. Find out as much as possible about your crop and the area where you are farming. Join discussion groups, go to workshops, make contact with your local farmers association, and then gather as much as possible information about the crop that you're going to grow. Yes, and listen to conversations like this. I must say this was very, very informative, and I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and I love that. Let's all gather to grow. I see one last person wanting to say something. But Dade, you have the floor. You can just share your last point before I give my speakers a last word.
Many thanks for having this beautiful room. Such topics are the ones that are going to empower Africa. As we discuss, let's start thinking as African children how policy formation can be, across the region, not just across SADC, but across Africa in protecting the resources that we have. The youth should start thinking on how we can unify policy and policy doctrine within Africa to shape even in agriculture, partnership, exchange, and so forth. Otherwise, we'll miss the mark and we'll always go back to the Western world and so forth. And then a deliberate needs to mechanize who's making our tractors and machines and so forth. There needs to be like an exchange of ideas on how we can empower the African farmer to become more commercial, make it into a business platforms, and that way I think we can move forward. It all starts with such interest with the youth coming together to discuss something that is critical. If Africa can't feed itself, someone will come and feed you with conditions.
Thank you so much for your contributions, and couldn't agree more there. Sibamandla, would you like to say one last word, and then I'll give the final word to Unati, seeing that she opened for us tonight.
My last word would be like, as long as human needs food, agriculture will be always relevant. So let's hang on there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much. Unati, last comments from you?
Thank you so much. I just want to say, looking at small-scale farming and what is happening in South Africa, there's a lot of potential. We have potential to access even the markets that farmers require. But it all starts with opening up to change, opening up to testing new cultivar. And also, I've seen a lot of people that will plant, the production is good, they did not have pest problems. But now when you harvest, what happens after? So such things also you need to look at. Your post-harvest handling. Sometimes it also affects how you present your produce to the market that you want. So all the best with everyone that is venturing into farming.
Thank you so much, Unati. It was so great having you. Lots of great insights from your side as well. Thank you so much. Kugu, I hope that you had a good evening. I definitely did. To all the farmers in this space, just a note that we've officially launched the Farmers Inside Track Academy. So if you want to know about all things broiler production, we'll be hosting a number of training sessions over the next 2 to 3 months, and it will be coming to your province. So if you want to know anything about broiler production, do check it out. It's Farmers Inside Track. We have a whole page dedicated to it where you can book your training, register, and just go crazy with your farming training. And it's farmer training. So thanks so much. Gugu, you're awesome. I love doing this with you every week. So thanks so much.